Hey guys, I just want to start out a video here today talking a little bit about a topic, sort of to draw some more attention to it, or at least talk about a little bit between some of the members of the community. But I really want to talk about the thirst for content in Oceania, and especially that of CSGO, which I can speak the most about. I can't really speak much for other esport titles, but yeah, just in general, the thirst of content because at the moment our scene is in a really good spot in terms of competitions, players, that sort of thing, and it's really leaving this sort of field, this craft of esports behind. So today I wanted to sort of talk about a couple things about that topic, such as what we're missing, the things that are a little bit underdeveloped, as well as why it's also important, and of course what kind of things we can do to bring a solution to that. So first off, I want to talk about what we're actually missing in terms of Oceanic esports in Counter-Strike. First and foremost, journalism, and how it is incredibly underdeveloped here in Australia. So for the most part, things like event coverage is a big one. Things such as post-match interviews, predictions, and news posts. These things are really important to the scene to sort of give a little bit of history, as well as keep things up to date as to where things are for the scene. So in terms of event coverage, I don't think I've ever seen, or very little people coming out to these events doing video interviews, or even voice interviews, perhaps even some text to do sort of an article. And that in a way can be very underdeveloped, in a sense that for people who are out at work, or with family at the time, how do they then catch up with what's actually happened, or how do they get a feeling for the emotion, or the environment of which was happening at the moment of that tournament? There's really no easy way of finding that out, at least at the moment. So I think that's a really important one for event coverage. Of course, we do know people like Flames and Max Millet, as well as Nason. Those people, they are doing things to sort of work on this, and at the same time, there's only so much they can do, especially in the case of Flames working for HLTV. I mean, every major event, national title, CGPL, ESL, even this past Unicorn event that has gone by, that sort of has like a post article, talking about prize distribution, as well as the winners and how they got through it, those sorts of things. Just some general news posting stuff. And I'm sure that keeps Flames busy enough as it is, and having that being introduced probably maybe like 8 months ago, since then, has been really good for our scene. We've seen so many increase of viewers, and of course it being HLTV, a global news platform, and bringing many viewers in, of course that's understandable. But at a time, HLTV would have been in the exact same position as we are right now, and that is the lack of content. So it all starts somewhere, and Flames has definitely done a great job of bringing those viewers and other fans of different games into the Oceanic region. But the other thing with that is he can only do so much. He lives in New Zealand. It's pretty hard to make your way out to Australia for every event, especially about how many things are going on at the moment. I mean, we're in the 8th month of the year right now, and I'm pretty sure we're looking at maybe 4 to 5 LAN events still to continue for the remainder of 2017. And as you know, that can be a pretty hard thing to get to, especially for one individual. So that's definitely one thing in terms of journalism, how we're sort of missing it here in Australia, and yeah, just that sort of thing. And I also wanted to touch on as well analysis, in-depth stuff. So I'm talking about the ex-professionals, maybe even some current pros, people who have been around the scene for a really long time. Those sort of people have the great opportunity right now to be talking about the impacts of each games, how this strategy means that result, what it means for these two lineups to take this victory, the implications further on, just general context in terms of matches, seasons, and general performances, that sort of thing. And there's so many tournaments at the moment in terms of I've mentioned it before, there's just so much going on right now. How are people who are not in the scene avidly, or they're not dedicated fans, how do they know about this? How do they make sense of what's even going on? I can, safely say for people that, may have heard of a tournament such as IESF or Unicorn or, any sort of those tournaments and don't have the time to view it, how do they know what's happening? Or, what makes, Cybergamer in a couple weeks different to ESL that's in 4 weeks or something like that? Hypothetical example, what's the difference here? Is it the time? Is it the implications of the tournament? These sorts of things which, you really need those dedicated hardcore fans and players, ex-players, those sort of people to make sense of it, to sort of, draw the comparisons, draw the differences between each of them. And that is another sort of factor as to why, it can be really enjoyable to, consume this sort of content, because it's, instead of watching, 12 hours, 15 hours of a tournament, you can look at an article, a 30-minute video, just wrapping things up, and perhaps even, looking into the analysis of each of those games and what it actually meant. So just general context at least. So that's one other aspect as well that I think, Australia's missing in terms of content. Another thing as well is entertainment factors. So, I'm mainly talking about shows, podcasts, interviews, those sorts of things which not only is, a little bit insightful or, gives a little bit of detail or context to what's going on at the current moment in Counter-Strike, but also is entertaining. So, it's good to watch or good to hear from professional players about what, is going on in their lives, what it means between each of their teams, as well as, people on the outset looking in. So, definitely some points to raise there in terms of things that are making entertaining, and of course the implications it means afterwards for people who have no idea about Counter-Strike whatsoever. So that's sort of the three things I'm looking at the moment in terms of very little journalism, especially in the event side of things, live events, post-match interviews, that sort of thing, as well as in-depth analysis, breaking things down, making sense of all the tournaments that are going on at the moment, and as well as the entertainment, something that can reel more people in from outside Counter-Strike, from outside Australia. So that's sort of the three things we're missing. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the importance of that. So at the moment, documenting history. How much do we know about the history of Australia, or Australian Counter-Strike rather? I mean, unless you're a player that's been playing for over a decade, it's pretty hard to know about each of the players and what their histories are. So that's really important to sort of jot down, get into some paper or video, something that's very easy to make that gives the entire context, of a person's career, about perhaps like Havoc's time on Counter-Strike Source and how he's a very incredible player, or even Moe going all the way back to CS 1.6. Some people don't even know that, or even things like that, even some of the newer players as well, where they've come from, a player such as Liaz, his background in Call of Duty 4, these sorts of things which there's no way of knowing. And, it's not, you can't blame it. You can't blame for not knowing because the content isn't there. So, documenting history is a big one in terms of the importance of journalism and content, that sort of thing, as well as drawing in more crowds, sponsorships and fans, that sort of thing. So, in terms of, lots of events happening at the same time, people who make sense of it, bring entertainment, someone who has no idea about Counter-Strike, or at least Oceanic Counter-Strike whatsoever, can look at it, get a brief understanding, and perhaps be interested by it. And then all of a sudden you have more fans being brought in. And, that goes back to things like HLTV. They do a really good job of doing that, increasing viewers, increasing engagement. And the knock-on effect of that, I suppose, is the sponsorships that brings that in. And that's really what will help build Australian Counter-Strike, in the sense that more money's coming in, more eyes are on advertisers, more reason to back and support Counter-Strike in that sense. So there's another point, as for the importance of Counter-Strike or content in Counter-Strike. And the last one I want to bring up as well is the content of Australian Counter-Strike actually following suit with what's going on at the moment. So, we've seen a lot of development in terms of players, in terms of tournament organisers, those sorts of things where, there's been so much progression. I mean, even at the start of CSGO, we had a few dominant teams, maybe Vox Eminor or Immunity. Now we're talking about teams that run very deep, top 4, maybe top 6, perhaps even an argument for top 8. So these sorts of, these high volume of teams really allows for even more content to be made. And, if nothing gets done, it sort of gets left behind. So that's even the same for tournaments. We're seeing numerous international opportunities. I mean, there's probably another like 3 or 4 to go from this year that can, become a huge asset for players and for, fans alike in Australian Counter-Strike. So, as those develop, as more players get better, as more tournaments come into the scene, who's to make sense of it? Why is content falling behind in that sense? So that's sort of important about each of those things. And, I'm not just going to make a video saying, oh, this is what's bad, content's just terrible, this is awful. I don't like the idea of bringing up a problem without a solution. So, to sort of give a little bit more of a solution to this, it's just people need to do it. That's really it right there. More people need to do it. And, I could definitely be regarded as guilty in this sense. I've been trying to do content for maybe 6 to 8 months, and yet in terms of like the activity of my own channel, the activity of my writing, that sort of thing, has been almost negligible. So I'm definitely guilty in that sense, but in terms of actually the merits of what I'm saying is that no one's really doing it. And, bringing more people in that sense will be really great. And yeah, that's just a passion project, really. I mean, that's all you can say about it. There's not a whole lot of money, especially just in general about Australian esports. Not all players, not a single player is full-time, I don't think, right now. So why would we expect journalists to be the same? So that's sort of how I feel about that at the moment. And, doing things for money is just not very productive at all anyway. So, if people are looking at it, it's like, how much money can I make out of this? You're probably going about it the wrong way, and you probably need to look past that. And if it's not your passion, it's not your passion. So that's one thing about journalism that I sort of want to, or content rather, about possible solutions. Another thing about that as well is it's actually a really like difficult cycle as well in terms of content. Like content doesn't get made, no one sees content, therefore no one wants to make content, and then you just keep cycling and cycling over again. So let's say no articles are being made, let's say no videos are being made, these tournaments keep on happening, no one hears about them, no one likes the idea of content, and then therefore no one goes and out of their own volition and make content. So that's where it's a really terrible cycle. It's very difficult to break in the context that we're in right now. So it's very difficult in that sense. And it's just a matter of pushing through that, I suppose. And there are lots of benefits, of course, to doing these sorts of things, in terms of building the scene, feeling like a very rewarding sensation of, people enjoying your content and that sort of thing. So, if anyone here is viewing it and, sort of feels the idea of, hey, maybe I could try making a video or a guide maybe, or an interview, that sort of thing, I urge you to go for it. There's absolutely, almost zero competition. So it's a very great idea for people that can pursue that role, and it'll be better for everyone. I don't think there are many negative knockbacks in terms of the scene that can really make this worse for anyone involved or all parties involved in Oceanic Counter-Strike. So, that's another point to make, I suppose, as well, that people like players might even get a benefit out of this in the sense that, they get to document some of their history. And then if journalists are doing like news breaking stories talking about contracts or updates to leagues that players had no idea about or the community had no idea about, that might actually, skew things back, to proportionate, make things good again. But yeah, that's really just the general gist of what I wanted to talk about. Just by making this video, I'm sort of making content, and as of late I've been very slack in that sense. So nothing, nothing wild in terms of what I'm making right now in this video, but in a sense it is still a start. So I did want to do that here today, and yeah, just get people talking. Think about this topic and how they feel about it. But really, that's about it. And I want to thank you guys for watching. And if you do like the idea of content, I'm planning, I'm hoping to make more of it. So stay connected if you will, and have a nice day.